Mary Louisa Molesworth was the most celebrated children's writer in Victorian Britain, outselling Dickens among young readers, translated across Europe, treasured by Ruskin himself. Yet today, even her name has slipped from the cultural memory, buried under more famous competitors. Haberdash Books rescues forgotten classics that shaped entire childhoods, and today we're bringing back the work that charmed thousands. A 1880 Christmas story that asks the most profound question a child can ask: what happens when something beautiful never changes, never ages, never leaves you? Mrs. Molesworth, Mary Louisa, was the undisputed queen of Victorian children's literature. Her books sold in the tens of thousands during her lifetime. She published over 100 works. Ruskin wrote to her directly praising her gifts. She was translated into French, German, Italian, and Spanish. She won devoted readers across the English-speaking world and far beyond. Headmasters assigned her novels. Parents bought them as Christmas gifts, which explains why so many of her stories carry that festive weight. Yet after her death in 1921, something peculiar happened. Children's literature criticism pivoted sharply toward newer authors. The Edwardian wave crested and broke. Publishers reprinted her less. Teachers forgot her name. By the 1960s, she was nearly invisible in academic curricula. The mechanism was simple but brutal. Literary tastemakers moved on, and her work, though still beautiful, still moving, became coded as old-fashioned rather than timeless. No scandal, no bad translation, just the slow amnesia of taste. Today, her exploration of loneliness, loyalty, and the ache of permanence in a changing world feels startlingly modern, a meditation on childhood loss wrapped in the simplicity of a marble fountain and a lame girl's quiet devotion. If you've ever loved the emotional intelligence of George MacDonald, the gentle wisdom of Hans Christian Andersen, or the moral clarity of Charlotte Yonge, then Mary Louisa Molesworth's A Christmas Child is exactly what you've been looking for. The complete audiobook is at haberdashbooks.com. Subscribe and email hello@haberdashbooks.com with the subject Lost Library Pass to claim any full audiobook from our catalog free, MP3 yours to keep, EPUB when available. Refer a friend who subscribes and you both get another free audiobook. The link is in the description.
Jackie's New Dodge, Agnes Giberne Jones' Adventure, Catherine S. MacWade True to Her Charge, G. A. Henty Christmas Eve with Bruin, Frances Clare P. Blossom, Alice Corcoran Chapter I, Chapter II, Chapter III, Chapter IV, How the Starling Caught Cold Geo, Manville Fenn Sherry's Second Escapade, Mrs. Molesworth Neighbors Fair, C. M. Yon. Mrs. A. M. Goodhart Huey's Mistake, H. C. Adams The Fox Family, Fanny Barry The Story of a Silver Padlock, Mrs. A. M. Goodhart Two Church Mice, Emma Wood Chapter I, Chapter II, The New Master, S. Baringgood Peter, Fanny Barry Santa Claus, Helen Wilmot Buxton Waddy and the Wolves, Frances Clare. IT was called the Orange Garden, and in the middle stood a beautiful fountain. The water flowed from a horn held in the hands of a child figure carved in marble, and fell down with a soft plash into a fluted shell beneath. Out of this, it rippled again into a marble basin, round which the grass grew so green that the flower beds shone like jewels in a brilliant setting. Great orange trees in tubs stood on each side of the path that led from the old red-roofed palace to the fountain, and white benches, with banks of flowering plants behind them. In the summer evenings, many of the townspeople came and walked in the garden, enjoying the soft air and listening to the murmur of the fountain, whilst their children played round the stone basin, and, as they looked up at the marble child, wondered how it felt to be so high up, and to sit so still, so very still, all day. Was his little hand never tired of holding the great horn? And then, when the twilight fell and the stars peeped out one by one, the moon shone softly, and the scent of the orange flowers filled the air, was he not very lonely there? Was he not afraid? He never seemed frightened, for a smile dimpled his baby face, and old people told their grandchildren that he had always been the same. "He can never change," they said. "He is like one of the little angels." So the children called him the Fountain Angel. Now the Fountain Angel had many friends, and the chief of them all was Herminé, a poor little lame girl who lived with her grandfather, Bernhardt, in the gray stone cottage just outside the orange garden. Old Bernhardt was one of the Duke's gardeners, and Herminé had lived with him ever since she was a baby. She could remember no other relations, and as she could not run about and play with the other children, she had made her only friend, playmate, and confidant of the marble Fountain Angel, and she spent all her spare minutes happily by his side. One evening, late in the summer, old Bernhardt lay ill in his cottage, and the moon was shining brightly over the orange garden before Herminé came through the iron-scrolled gates with the slow tap, tap of her little crutch stick, and seated herself wearily on the grass beside the fountain. "I must wait here till I am rested, and then I shall creep in so that I do not wake poor grandfather," she said to herself. But somehow the air was so warm, and she had been working so hard all day that she fell asleep, a little round ball of blue homespun, with her head against a cold marble pillow. It must have been many hours later that the child awoke with a start, wondering where she was and why her bed had suddenly become so hard. It was bright moonlight. She rubbed her eyes, jumped up with the help of her crutch stick, and walked slowly round the fountain. The water splashed in the moonbeams, the shell and the rocks that supported it shone in the soft light, but the Fountain Angel was gone. Herminé stood with her eyes growing round with astonishment. Gone? Had someone stolen him whilst she was asleep? Had the earth opened and swallowed him up? What had become of him? "Are you looking for me, little friend?" said a child voice at her elbow. She turned quickly, and there in the path stood the missing Fountain Angel. He carried a watering can in his little hand, and his face was so sweet and childlike that Herminé quite forgot to be frightened, and found herself sitting down by his side on one of the white benches by the orange trees before she realized what she was doing. "You are wondering why I am here, little Herminé," he said, as he slipped his hand confidingly into hers and looked up at her with soft gray eyes. "You do not know that every night as the clock strikes one, I have the gift of life bestowed upon me, and can descend to earth to be indeed the good angel of the fountain. This power was given me as a reward for the faithful labors of my master, the great sculptor who many years ago designed and wrought me from a block of purest marble, and then presented me as an offering to the town in which he was born. So faithfully had he loved and studied nature, and so truly had he used his powers for noble ends, that his last prayer was granted him, and he died happily, knowing that I should be allowed to carry on his good deeds and loving care for others. For the last 100 years, I have tried faithfully to fulfill his wishes. I have carried water to fill the buckets and tubs of all the good neighbors round the orange garden. I have watered the gardens of all those who were poor or busy. I have brought fresh life to the plants and flowers." Herminé had listened to the Fountain Angel with absorbed interest. Now she seized her crutch stick and jumped from her seat eagerly. "Oh, let me help you," she cried. "I know I can never work as well as other children because I am lame, but please teach me to be useful and show me what I can do." "Yes, you shall help me, little friend," said the marble child. "Poor old Bernhardt is too old now to water his garden himself, so I do it every night for him, and you shall help." He put a watering can into Herminé's hand exactly like the one he carried himself, and when she had once filled it at the fountain, she noticed that it always remained full of bubbling water. So there they worked together, the little girl and the Fountain Angel. In and out amongst the banks of flowering bushes tapped Herminé's crutch, and in and out darted the white form of the marble child, whilst a beautiful scent of fresh, moist earth and orange bloom rose upon the air. The stars shone down softly upon the little pair, and Herminé's heart was filled with joy as she thought how happy she was to be allowed to share in such a good work. "And now, little friend, you must go home and sleep," said the Fountain Angel, "for I have to carry water to the houses of all the sick and poor in the town. You could not help me there, I have to go and come so quickly. Before you go bathe your lame foot in the fountain, its water has a gift of healing. Goodbye, tomorrow we shall meet again. He waved his hand affectionately towards Herminé and disappeared through the iron-scrolled gates. Left alone, she sat dabbling her foot in the cool waters of the fountain and thinking over all that the marble child had told her, till the clock in the palace tower struck 3, and she started as she realized how late it was. She pulled on her little wooden-soled shoes and hurried to her grandfather's cottage, letting herself in as gently as she could so that she might not disturb him. He was still sleeping quietly, and as soon as Herminé's little tired head touched the pillow, she also was in the land of dreams. Old Bernhardt grew rapidly better and was pleased and surprised on his first visit to the orange garden to find that everything was in perfect order and the ground fresh and moist, as though just watered by a heavy shower. "How thick the dews have fallen," he said to Herminé, as he seated himself contentedly on one of the white benches. "It is a happy thing for me, for it would have tired my old back sorely to begin to water the orange tubs this morning." Herminé smiled with delight and nodded towards the fountain angel. She would have liked to laugh out loud, but reflected that her grandfather might ask what amused her. "Really, it all looks very well, considering the time of year," mused the old gardener. "I might just do a little sweeping up and then leave it. It is wonderful how heavy the dews are now the autumn comes on." Herminé left her grandfather with a broom in his hand and went back again to the little cottage. She worked very hard to keep everything clean and neat, and that day her foot felt lighter and more easily moved than she could ever remember it. "Oh, I wonder if the fountain angel will really cure me," she said to herself, as she scrubbed away at the black chest in which she and her grandfather kept their Sunday clothing. How beautiful it would be to be able to run about like other children. How beautiful. Again that evening Herminé went into the orange garden, and for many evenings after, helping the fountain angel in his work and bathing her lame foot in the healing water. Her grandfather noticed, with astonishment, that she had put aside her crutch stick, and before very long she was able to run about as merrily as any of the children she used to long to play with on the grass by the marble fountain. It is many, many years ago now since little Herminé grew well and strong and went away to a new country, where children with blue eyes like her own clustered round her knee in the soft summer twilight, but the orange garden remains unchanged. The scent of flowers still fills the air, the water drips with the same soothing splash into the marble basin, and there, with his old sweet smile, stands the marble figure of the fountain angel. A gallant rescue. It was a pleasant day about the beginning of April, a bright, warm, jovial day, such as one wishes would last all the year round, a day that tells of winter past and gives assurance that summer is really about to come. The fisher boys and girls of Brindleport romped on the beach with unquenchable ardor. The men busied themselves about their boats, and the women about their nets and bait, in a supremely contented frame of mind. Even the crabs seemed to be filled with the spirit of joyous activity, for, as Dan Barcombe said, they scuttled about from pool to pool as if it were a cleaning-up day in their domestic arrangements, and displayed more than their wonted readiness to raise their claws and fight, not an unknown condition in those who have much to do with cleaning-up days. Daniel Barcombe was the coxswain of the lifeboat. He flung wide the doors of his boathouse on that day and went to work with a will on sundry small repairs. Barcombe was proud of his boat. If the boat had possessed a mind of its own, it would have been equally proud of its coxswain, for he was a stalwart, lion-like man of Herculean frame, with simple thoughts and tastes and a modest spirit. Many a time had his great muscular strength and daring been the means, at critical moments, of saving his boat from destruction on the black rocks outside the port. "Are you going out today, Dan?" asked a soft, sweet voice of the coxswain, who was admiring the white and blue boat which, resting on its carriage, towered high over.
That's the opening of A Christmas Child, a story that asks whether beauty itself can be a companion, whether stillness can be love. Subscribe, claim your free Lost Library audiobook, and the complete novel is waiting at haberdashbooks.com. We'll bring you a new forgotten classic every single day.